Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to Paranormal Axetivities with your host, Ben Axe. And today's episode is brought to you by Restaurant.com. With Restaurant.com, you can save at thousands of restaurants across the country with just a few clicks. Their dining deals range from $5 to $100, never expire, and cost you a fraction of face value. Dinner has never been easier with Restaurant.com, used for dine-in, takeout, or delivery. Restaurant.com is offering our listeners 50% off their next purchase by going to www.restaurant.com/podcast. That's www.restaurant.com/podcast for 50% off your next purchase. Restaurant.com is the best deal every meal. And yeah, guys, well, again, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you guys here and welcome you to the show for the first time. I've talked to him in the past on RSH Wrestling and a few other shows we've done together at alleverythingentertainment.com. But here he is again for the first time ever at Paranormal Axetivities, the host of the Armchair Wrestling Podcast, the host of Stand Your Ground Podcast, Mr. Alex Bennison. What's going on, brother?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. How about you?
Not a whole lot, man. Hey, I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, fingers crossed we won't be kicking up any paranormal activity for tonight.
Well, we'll see. We can't make any promises, but again, like I said, welcome to Paranormal Axetivities. All right, and we're back. And during that, talking about paranormal stuff, during that, my laptop just like freaked out. And I don't really know what's going on. So I can't really see you guys. Hold on. There we go. All right, we're back. All right, I don't know. That was weird. All right, so what's going on, man? You're over in England, which is, this is a US-based show, so it's awesome to have an England guy on. And I believe you'll be the first person from England or their Europe over there that's been on Paranormal Activities. I could be wrong. I could be mistaken, but I believe you're the first one to be on Paranormal Activities. So I am glad to have you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I mean, to be honest, with the time difference as well, with it being 11 p.m. over here, it just makes it feel a little bit more creepy now.
Oh, is that right? Hey, nighttime is scary. It just got dark here with the time change, so it's later there, but I think we're equally dark. So
yeah.
So how was your Halloween, man? I know we're both Halloween fans. We had a horror movie podcast together just 2 weeks ago, I believe, a little less than 2 weeks ago, talking about horror movies. So how was the Halloween for you?
It wasn't too bad. It feels like Halloween's kind of dropped off a cliff in England. It feels like one of those things where you're really excited for it as a kid, but then when you get older, it's more just about drinking, which is pretty much every holiday as well. But no, we didn't really do much. We watched Hocus Pocus.
Nice.
Shannon loves a good Disney film. And we had a lovely little broadcast from his Prime Minister telling us that we're all back into lockdown for 28 days. So happy Halloween.
There you go. The Halloween gift for you. Yeah, man, pretty much the same here. It's all turned into drinking, especially after you turn, actually probably even high school, but after you turn 18. All about the partying and drinking. I still try to hold on to the magic that is Halloween. I still have Halloween parties. We get smashed, but still we try to have scary costumes. I still try to watch horror movies, classics and that kind of stuff. So pretty much the same thing. We're adults now. Nothing's the same anymore. It sucks.
Yeah, we watched Hocus Pocus on Halloween, but the day before we watched some Netflix original Halloween movie thing. It was fucking terrible. I can't even remember what the name was. It was that bad. It was something about this group of 6 people that were getting stalked around a theme park, and this killer was killing them and leaving them as
oh, that sounds lame.
Pieces. Yeah, it just wasn't that good. We ended up skipping to see each death and clicking on to watching just normal shit TV.
I'll do the same thing. Yeah, we watched Hocus Pocus. You have to watch that one these days. And then we watched the original Halloween. and a few other things throughout the season. But the actual day, just the original Halloween, I think. Went to a haunted corn maze. That was cool. And I do have one quick activity for you from Halloween day. It was like noon, probably, not even. And my wife and I were sitting downstairs talking about what we want to do. And, her brother had passed away a few years ago, and he got brought up. And as soon as she mentioned his name, because I guess him and her liked Halloween back in the day, as soon as she mentioned his name, a big stomp happened upstairs. Like, I'm upstairs right now. I was in the room next door. Big fucking stomp. I was like, well, that's her brother on Halloween.
You're right. Do you want to come down?
Right. It was pretty crazy. But yeah, man, so let's get right into it now. So you told me on the show we did a few weeks ago that you used to live in a haunted house.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's all really weird because it was in my family before we moved into it as like an actual home. It was a old nursing home. My granddad and grandma used to own it. And then it shut for like 5 years, and then we bought it off him and renovated it and did everything up. But my mum used to actually work there as a nurse as well. So she's got all the stories of things that happened while it was a nursing home. And then we've got it's all shut down. There's no electric or water working. We're trying to renovate it in the dark, all the stuff that happens there. And then when we move in, there's still stuff that happens. So it was weird, really weird to like experience moving in. Those first few weeks was shit scary.
I bet. Yeah, I did hear, I've read, or I've learned through the course of doing the show that when you renovate an old house like that, sometimes that can kick up old spirits and make them more active, whether they don't like what you're doing or whatever the reasons may be. But I heard that renovating a lot of times creates paranormal activity.
Yeah, I think might be jumping ahead here, but so there's the original house, which was built as an actual house, and that was built in 1870. And then there was an extension that was put onto the side as part of the nursing home, and I think that was put on 1950, something like that. But we knocked that extension bit down so that we just had the old original house still. And when that got knocked down was when most of the stuff kicked off. So it's like we knocked down where they were living, and they were like, "Nah, fuck this shit."
That's pretty awesome, actually. So, how old were you, or how long ago? I don't mean your age, I guess, but like, how long ago did you move into that house?
So it was a few months after my 18th. So it's like 6 years ago now that we moved into it.
Oh, nice.
I only moved out last year, and I still get my mum texting me with random stories of stuff that's happened. It's like, "Oh, you'll never guess what happened at like 3 a.m. Like, fucking great."
Oh yeah. So you saw a family who lives there then?
Yeah. My brothers and my mum and dad still live there.
Oh hell yeah, that's awesome. So you can still hear some stories. So if you can recall, I like to do things in order if possible. You don't have to tell me stuff in order, but some of my questions may ask it. So like, what was the first few things you started to see? Like, what started happening when you first moved in?
I mean, when we first properly moved in, I think the first thing my mum used to she'd tell us about things that happened. There used to be this lift shaft, and then like the main staircase was around the lift, and we knocked that out, took the lift shaft out, and then put a different staircase in. And my mum told us once about this woman that they tried carrying downstairs, and she fell, and basically she died at the bottom of those stairs.
Oh,
and
wow.
We have a toilet that basically faces onto that, and we used to sit in the kitchen and have a drink with my brothers sometimes, and then if you went to that toilet every so often, you could just hear this faint little like tumble, as if someone was like either they'd fallen over or if they were tapping on the floor. And I always remember like, no, leave the light on outside because I am coming back out into pitch blackness, because otherwise I'm sleeping in the toilet. I am not coming out into that.
That's fair. I think I'd be too, man. I don't know if you're like me at all. Like, I'm terrified of the dark still, even though I'm in my 30s. if I can't see what's out there, I'm probably not going to go investigate, you know?
Yeah. My mum's completely the opposite. She's that person in the horror film that walks off to go find out where the killer is. You know, she would be the first person to die.
Saves time that way, I guess. So do you know like how long that person like passed away in your house before you guys renovated or moved in?
Um, so I must have been about 8 or 9. So it were a good 10, maybe 11 years before I moved in. That that accident happened. I do remember being a kid and like seeing all the blue flashing lights because we moved from next door. The old folks home used to be next door to where we actually lived originally. So I remember all the blue flashing lights because then the police have to come and they have to find out if it was on purpose and all that jazz. But I remember that and thinking, God, I wonder what's happened. I wonder if my mum's okay. And she just came back and she's like, yeah, someone fell.
Oh, wow. That's pretty crazy. So I don't, again, if I don't want to get personal, or whatever, but do you think you ever saw like something that could have been the spirit of her in the house by chance, or is there anything that you've seen indicate to that by chance?
Um, I see. I honestly, I was always skeptical about ghosts. I always said that I wouldn't believe it until I saw something with my own eyes. And I must admit, when I was in that house, there was a few times that you felt like you saw something out of the corner of your eye, and you'd be like, and then there's nothing there. So I think there's a few times that I feel like I caught glances of people or things that weren't actually there, but when you turn, they've just gone.
Right.
But I mean, there's some weird stuff that used to happen.
That's fair. So we have this is a live episode of Paranormal Axetivities for the audio listeners here. And we have a couple of comments, and I believe Shannon, you must know Shannon as she's talking about your house.
Yeah, it's my fiance.
And she's a brand new writer over here at alleverythingentertainment.com. And I just actually read her article today about the Witches movie. Awesome article, great points. I just watched that movie over the weekend actually as well. So that was a great article. I can't wait to see more from Shannon. But she says she is glad you don't have to sleep there anymore. So she remembers going over to your house and always feeling super scared to be left alone in your room or to go upstairs on her own. That sounds about right. And real quick, this is, part of AEE here, and we do have Tank, Tim, whatever his name is. Him and his ghost cat are going to run wild all over you and your ghost at TLC, brother. And I think that's referring to you, right? Because it's you versus him for the my former Wednesday night championship belt. Is that right?
Yeah, a bit of cross promotion here. Next I'll be calling you Chuck.
Right.
Yeah. But he's got no chance in hell, so
yeah.
We'll go on from there.
5 tries to get it, I think you got this in the bag. But anyway, moving back to the so, you've seen some stuff. So tell us about what you've seen. People not there when you look. That I definitely do. I've seen that quite a bit. Pretty much in my car, actually. I think when Archie was on the show a few weeks ago, I mentioned I see eyes a lot in my car. And like to this day, probably not every morning, but probably every other to 3 times a week, I'll look and I see eyes in the back of my car and they disappear really quickly. So I definitely believe in things like that. When that happened to you, did you ever feel like the pit in your belly, do you think? Or is it just maybe your imagination? What was your opinions when that happened?
Yeah, you always get that feeling, don't you? It feels like someone burning a hole in the back of your head, and like you get that weird tingling feeling on the back of your neck. It's as if someone's like right behind you. I've had that quite a few times where it felt like you can feel someone breathing right there, and then you turn and there's just nobody. But me and my mum are I think we're in the same boat of we both believe there's something, but we also don't believe that they can harm you. So there's no reason to be scared of them.
That's fair. That's an opinion to live by. I believe pretty much the same way. I've never seen any evidence, at least in my cases, that I was going to be hurt. So I'm with you. So what else? You lived there for 5 years or so. What else have you seen in the house?
Well, when we originally went into the house, when we were decided that we were going to renovate it and everything, There were an old lady that my mum used to look after, and she actually passed away in the house, and she was called Ethel. But she had like butterflies everywhere. She used to absolutely adore butterflies. She had butterfly necklace, earrings, and everything. When we opened it up, on the floor, tons of dead butterflies everywhere, just scattered around this old folks' home. And to this day, my mum's still got one of them. She's like, like people pin them and put them in photo frames and stuff. She's got one of those. And my mum said that when we first went in, because she saw all the butterflies on the floor, that she knew that we were going to be safe living there, because it was like she was there to protect us or something.
Okay.
Which I guess kind of calms your nerves, even at 18, when you hear your mum say stuff like that. You're like, yeah, all right, it'll be fine.
If she says it must be true. That's what I go with.
Yeah.
Yvonne DeBoer's watching. Hi, Yvonne. Thanks
Hi,
for
Yvonne.
So that's pretty wild. So you just found a bunch of dead butterflies after she passed?
They were scattered everywhere. Like it wasn't as if like there was just one random patch where they would be. They were like, it was like a trail. They went all the way from downstairs up the staircase, but they were in places where doors were closed and locked, and you couldn't, like, there was no possible way for them to get in other than like maybe if they hatched in there. But it was too cold for butterflies to hatch, so I don't really know how they got everywhere. But yeah, man, it was weird walking in and seeing all that.
That would be pretty wild. I can honestly say I've never experienced anything like that before, so that's pretty wild. Okay, so like, I feel like that would freak me out a little bit, honestly, if that happened. That's hard. It's hard to be a coincidence, I guess. Like, how do you really explain that?
Yeah, I know butterflies are common, aren't they? Like, let's not try and be around bus. It's not like we walked in, there were a bunch of dead tigers everywhere.
Right.
But for them to get into a solid brick thing that was properly boarded up, like all the windows were boarded up, there were no cracks or anything. It just seems strange for them to all be in there and all to have died in like random different places as well.
I mean, absolutely. I can honestly say, even, my house, we have the doors open. We have bugs coming in and out. I've never seen a dead butterfly. And now the argument could be made, well, they're not that common in my area. Sure. But we do have like a lot of like stink bugs and like moths. I live in a very nice area. And there's stuff like that. And I've never seen a shit ton just scatter on the house dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that they're synonymous with Ethel. That's pretty wild.
What a random name as well. I always used to crack me up with that. Just, little Ethel's here to look over us and make sure we're all right.
Fair enough. So, butterflies. What else we had in the 5-year period? Anything else pretty crazy?
So actually, the reason how we found out how the house was built in the 1870s, my dad got it from his dad, basically, when he was the nursing home. And we were always there going, I wonder what this house used to be. It's like there used to be an old railway tracks near us and things. We thought it used to be the old station house. We always went back and forth. And then like one week, my dad went, you know what? We're really going to look into this. Then all of a sudden, an old woman comes to the door. She rings the doorbell. She walks in because she thinks it's just like a nursing home. Again, there used to be like 2 separate doors. So you'd walk in one and then there'd be a doorbell on the other side. So she walked in, rang the doorbell. My dad came to the door and he was like, who are you? And she was like, oh, well, this used to be where I lived. She was like 80 odd. And she brought the photo album of what the house used to look like when it was originally built.
Oh, wow.
And it was so weird looking back at them because they were like, they had pictures of what the road used to look like when all the houses were built on it and full of trees and things. And like, it just seemed such a weird coincidence for my dad to start of that week go, oh, I'm going to look up and see what this actually used to be, for then like a couple of days to come knocking on the door and be like, oh yeah, I used to live here. And I can't remember any of the stories that she told us, but she said something about her dad used to be a miner and he passed away in the mines that were near the house. So she always used to say that things, like she said that she could still feel her dad in that house
Oh yeah.
when she was a kid. So that he might have been there. Maybe that might have been one of the ghosts that we saw or didn't see, out the corner of your eye or whatever. But
I get
it,
you.
but it seemed weird to have that come from the horse's mouth and actually have the physical evidence in your hands of what it was.
Oh, absolutely. Like it makes it real, right? Like it's there.
Yeah, like you can't fake photos from like the early 1900s. Like it just wasn't possible. So it just seemed really really surreal for that to happen.
Absolutely. And like, why would you? Why would somebody just like fake that and then go to your house and just tell you that? That's makes no sense. So
Yeah, to this day I still don't know why she just turned up at the door. Like, she
I don't
wasn't she wasn't living nearby. Like she was like a good hour and a half away. She drove all the way just to turn up at our house. It was like, well, right, okay.
yeah, man, that's seriously like right out of a horror movie. Like that's the kind of shit that happens, and then like she shows up, and then like all this ghost stuff starts happening, and like she has to like come back to the house and like do some kind of like weird ritual to stop it. Like like what is happening?
Yeah, and it turns out she's been dead for 15 years.
That's wild. I mean, that's one cool thing about like when you compare England and the U.S. with their history. Like the U.S. is a fairly new country. Yeah, we've been around since the 1700s, I guess, but we don't have, at least where I live in like in Ohio, we don't have like old school houses that are like that old that people still live in. Sure, people will probably quote me, well, actually, if you go to this house, sure, there are some. Like my house I live in now was built in 1950. The house I grew up in, my grandfather built in like the 1940s. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're not super old, like 1800s, at least generally where I live. So that's one really cool thing that like I hear a lot about over in England is there's a lot of historic buildings, a lot of historic houses that are still holding up. Unlike here, where we just tear houses down and build new ones every fucking 10 years, it seems like.
Yeah, like all the house that we moved into now is not as old as what I used to live in. Like this one was built, I think it's really early 1900s that this one was built. You've still got that old house feel. And a lot of my friends are now moving into new build houses, and you can really like tell the difference. And it feels so much weirder walking into a new house than walking into, say, like one of our houses now. You got that feeling of, well, this doesn't feel like a proper English house walking into a new build now.
Absolutely. I totally understand what you're talking about. It's like a heaviness in an old area.
Yeah.
Like I always say, if your house is haunted, or I use all kinds of different words. I don't necessarily believe in haunted houses, like I've discussed before. But you can always tell if there is a presence in your house or something else that's not expected to be there or whatever. You just feel that heavy gut in your feeling. And when you walk into a house that doesn't have that, you can totally tell the difference, like you just explained. I'm really glad you brought that up because that is so, so true. Like you can just tell the difference.
Yeah. Do you just want me to reel off some of these stories? Or
Yeah, man, let's get to it. What we got?
So we've got there was another old lady that fell, but it wasn't the fall that killed her. There was like this old weird like point of the building, and it had this wooden beam in the middle of it. And it came to a proper sharp point, and she hit the corner of her head on this point. That's what killed her. But when she died there, all the people that worked in this nursing home knew that where she passed away, there used to be a woman in a white dress that used to walk straight past the doorway of where she fell. And people used to see her run out to go see which old patient it was, and then there'd be nobody there. But that happened a few times after we moved in as well. My mum played it off casually because she'd seen it for years. She's like, "Oh yeah, don't worry, there's nobody there." But like, if it were one with me or my brothers, we used to run out and be like, "Oh, there's nothing." But everyone stands by the fact that this woman in this white dress used to walk past the front of our kitchen door. It's where she fell. So they used this woman, you could see it, and we had this weird like our doors had a pane of glass in the middle, so you could see through into the hallway to let some more light into the kitchen. So you could see just this figure just walk straight past. And that were one of those ones that if you caught it out of the corner of your eye, you'd be like, first time you'd be like, oh shit. And then I think it got to that point where we just got used to it. We're like, oh, she's back.
That reminds me of, I think we talked about it, Bly Manor.
Yeah.
Jesus. Even to the point where you guys got used to it, just like in Bly Manor.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we didn't have a fucking lady in the lake, but yeah, she might have been. We just nobody crossed a path properly.
She walked really far from the lake to your house.
Yeah. She's been walking for fucking miles.
Do your family still see her at all? I know they still live there. Do they still see her? Is she still that common?
To be honest, I texted my mum today before I came on this to try and see if she'd got any stories or anything she wanted to mention. And she didn't bring up the woman, but I think that is still a thing that happens. I think I remember a couple of weeks ago, me and my girlfriend went up and I remember seeing something out of the corner of my eye while I was stood in the kitchen and I was thinking, oh, that must have been the same thing. But my mum was saying that a couple of weeks ago she was laid in bed upstairs, and her bedroom is on the side of where the old building that got knocked down is, and she heard these footsteps running towards her bedroom door, and then a load of screaming. So my mum being my mum, flings the door open to see who it is. Nobody there. So she goes downstairs, she takes a torch, she goes looking round. One of the dogs is sat on the sofa, like shaking, like petrified shaking. The other one has this we have like a little shoe cupboard, and she goes and hides behind the door. That's like her little safety blanket. And she was hid behind there, and she could not get her out of this cupboard for the life of her. And my mum sticks by the fact that she checked everywhere. She even went outside to see if somebody had broken in, and then shit themselves and tried to run out, and there was nobody there. There was no break-in, nothing. But she stands by the fact she heard footsteps running towards her bedroom door and just screaming, like proper top of the lungs screaming.
Damn.
And that's only a few weeks ago as well.
That kind of gave me chill bumps a little bit. It was like that happening, and that was recent. Jesus.
Yeah, because when it got shut down, my auntie brought a priest to come and do like an exorcism, and she took some of the old people that worked there, and basically the priest would go around and say, oh, this is where so and so passed away, wants to let you know that everything's fine, and stuff like that. Clearly didn't work because still things are happening. So
yeah, that's one of those things. Like I definitely believe in like saging and blessing the houses and that kind of stuff, but it's one of those things. It's not a one and done kind of deal, in my opinion. Like you have to do it consistently, otherwise this is going to come back. So if it was just a one and done, probably not going to be 100% effective. That's just my opinion. I could be completely fucking wrong. I'm no expert, but that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So recent. So what else do we have going on in the house?
Well, we had another old woman that was called Edith. She died, and Shannon's going to absolutely kill me for this because she had no idea about this. So Shannon, I'm sorry if you are still watching. You'll probably hit me when I go back upstairs. She died in the room that was next door to my old bedroom.
Oh shit.
And there was plenty of times where me and Shannon would be laid in bed and we'd hear like a bang, and we'd be like, "What? That sounded like it came from next door." And then when you go next door, there's absolutely nobody there. But we had like these cupboards that were next door that had panes of glass on the front of the door. So when you opened it up, it was like a mirror basically for you already. But we also had like gym equipment in there. So we had this rowing machine. And if you rowed, it'd be like it would be like a horror movie thing where you see someone rowing and it's filming from side on, and then when they go back, there's somebody there.
Oh, there you go.
And then they've disappeared. But yeah, that always used to creep me out. We'd be laid in bed and it'd be like 3 in the morning and you just hear this bang. What the fuck was that? And then you go check and there's just nobody there.
Yeah, that would be creepy. That one gave me a little bit of goosebumps as well. And Shannon is still watching. And he says, "No way. I knew it. I always felt that that room was creepy." Yeah, that sounds pretty creepy, man. So like one thing I'm noticing with a lot of your stories is how many people died in this house, do you think? Do you have like a number?
I don't have a specific number, no, because this old folks home was open before I
Right.
was born, so it's early 1999, no, 90s, sorry, that it was open. But I mean, from what I remember, which is like from when I was 8 or 9, I'm sure that there must have been like 15, 20 people that passed away in this house, which isn't uncommon because the people that were coming in were like 88, 89. You
Right.
know, it's one of those things, people put them in a home normally they deteriorate quite fast rather than being at home.
Yep. I mean, that makes sense, but it's still just kind of unsettling, I think. I mean, I can't honestly say I've ever lived in a house that had people pass away. And now I'm not saying I have lived in a lot of houses, especially like in Cincinnati and stuff, just going through school and all that stuff. But to know, like, did that ever like cross your mind when you were living there? Or did you ever think people have died here? And like, I guess I'm not sure what I'm asking here, but did that ever like, creep you out? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, when we were renovating it, we all got to pick as rooms. Like my brothers, we knocked rooms through and made them bigger. So that was the first question: was right, Mum, who died in this room? Do you know who was in this room and did they die here? um, Luckily, the room that I picked, nobody had died in the 2 rooms between, but someone had died in the one next door. So, but my mum, if we walked around the house with my mum now, she'd be able to go, yeah, she died there, something happened there. Like
Yeah.
the stories that she's got, it's mental.
Oh yeah, I believe that. Maybe that's why she's not as afraid of it because she knows the history and she's like, well, if that happened, it's probably this person and blah blah blah. So
Yeah,
I could help with the fear factor, I guess.
yeah. She always said that there was on the downstairs. There was I can't remember how many rooms there used to be. I think there were like 24 rooms for old people. And downstairs there were a long corridor, and at the end there was this old man. And apparently, he was the nicest old man, and he was called Norman. But when he passed away, his room door always used to slam. Like people would be it'd be nighttime and they'd be away from that, and you just hear this door slamming from that end of the corridor. So he got the nickname Storming Norman, just to try and like jubilize it, so that it was not as scary to him. But like my mum sticks by that she'd be in the medicine room, like getting people's stuff, and she'd just hear this banging coming from the room. And nobody went once someone passed away. I think they had like this 3 month period before they put someone else in that room. She said for those 3 months, that door just slammed constantly.
That's pretty wild. Like this house seems to have a lot of activity. So, but I guess knowing where they came from helps the situation. But like, all right, so the door was slammed shut. So did that ever like freak you guys out? Like, did you ever, or did you just, I guess, do you get used to that kind of stuff when it's just that common? Do you just like, oh, that's Storm and Norman?
um, yeah, I think it does. It does get easier. Like we lived there for well, I personally lived there for 5 years. Um, the first 3 months were quite like weird living there, and there were still things like the later parts where when we lived there that it were strange, and there was stuff that you couldn't explain to people, but at the same time, you kind of got used to living with it, so it didn't affect you as much. Like there'll be things that people come round and they'll say, "Oh, did you hear that?" And you'll be completely oblivious to it because you've just been so used to hearing it constantly that it doesn't even cross your mind that it's a scary thing anymore.
Right. That makes sense, I guess. Um, Oh, good deal. So, what else happened? You lived there for 5 years. Your parents still live there. Brother still lives there. What else? Is there any other common, like, repetitive ghost actions that happened a lot, or do you have like new things that happen here and there? Or, like, what's like the typical routine of the house? I guess.
Um, it's hard to say because even though it's only been like a year and a bit that I've been removed from living there, there's still things that you think back to and you go, oh yeah, that did used to happen, but it don't cross your mind because you've put it out of your mind from trying to take it away from being a scary thing. Um, there was I'm trying to think. There's like I think there's like three more. Um, there were like repetitive things. They were just things that kept happening every so often. Um, Again, outside my mum's room used to be a different staircase, and that went it had a stair lift in it, and it used to sound like you could hear the stair lift going, even though it had been removed. Like like a as if it were like a crane lifting. You could just hear this, even though that wasn't there anymore, and the floor were boarded up and things. You could still hear that every so often. But
Oh,
my dad absolutely hates anything to talk about ghosts. If you say anything about a ghost, he'll tell you to fuck off. Like, he hates it. He can't watch ghost movies or anything. He'll sit and watch a Saw movie and not blink. But if you say anything about ghosts, that's it. But he always tries to rationalize things, and I think he's that person where he doesn't believe it. He will rather tell himself, "Oh, well, that must have been the TV that's downstairs that's not on."
right. I understand. My dad's very similar. Like he's all about ghosts. He believes in them, and then like we'll start talking about it, and then it gets kind of too real, and then he shuts it down. Like, you know what? That's probably bullshit, and then he'll move on. It's very similar.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's kind of crazy. So you're still hearing like a crane noise, even though there's no lift there. How long was that a nursing home? Do you know?
um. So it's shut. It was shut 2010 or 2009. Um, I think it was a nursing home from the late 70s, maybe early 80s.
Oh,
So
good deal.
it's a good 30, 40 years, I think, that it was a nursing home.
That's I mean that's a long time, and that's enough time I believe to like the energy is there. They live there. That's where a lot of people ended their lives there. So it's I definitely believe that'd be a prime example of a haunted house.
Yeah. See, in where I live, I think I mentioned it in the Halloween special thing where we talked about horror movies. We've got like a specific house, and it's known as I think it's either the second or the third most haunted house in England. Um, and it's home to this ghost that they call the Black Monk. And we have this show over here. Oh God, what's the show called? Ghost Hunters, I think it might be called, or something like that.
I
They
gotcha.
went and spent a night there, and you can actually pay to spend a night there now. But they set up, they got all the cameras ready and everything, and you could hear banging upstairs, and they'd go upstairs, and then one of the people they'd be filming from bottom of the stairs, and one of the people get dragged back into a room, and it's like I want to believe that's true, but because I haven't seen it, I can't believe it. But now, because I've lived in this house and these things have happened and I've seen these things, like it's, I can understand if I talked to somebody and they wouldn't believe all the stuff that I say, but because I lived it, it's like, no, it is true. These things do happen. Like it is realistic now.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And it's one of those things like I totally understand those who don't believe in the paranormal things because it is seeing as believing, honestly. And so like once you see it, once you feel it, once you hear it, it's like yeah. And once you get past the rationalization, if you've seen it enough, you've heard it enough, you've experienced it enough, you can't really argue it at a certain point. And it's always nice when it's validated by others, I think. So you know what I mean? Like when other people go and experience that stuff for themselves and like, oh, that shit, that does happen.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I always take from living there is if the ghosts and everything are real, these things that you can see out of the corner of your eye, it explains why the house that I lived in was always cold. Like even if you put the radiators on, it was freezing. It was warmer outside than being in my house.
Oh yeah.
And it always felt like, is it cold because there's something there, or is it just cold because it's just an old house? But now that I've come away from it does make me think it's cold because there's something still lingering there.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you just know it's colder than other houses of the same type are. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, they always say that, when spirits are, you walk around, you feel cold spots when they're active and that kind of stuff. So I absolutely believe that as well. Um, so when it comes to this house, is there anything else you want to share with us?
Well, I don't know. Shannon's put that she always used to be able to hear a
Oh, there you
clicking on the upstairs landing when the lights were out. Shannon is a light sleeper. Like, if I'm asleep, that's it. I am waking up. Like, you're gonna have to hit me with like a sledgehammer if you're gonna want to wake me up. Whereas Shannon, the slightest thing happens and she's awake like that. But that doesn't surprise me. The fact that you could hear those clickings on the outside, like the same as the stair lift that wasn't there but is there, kind of thing. It's just like little creaks and cracks and stuff that you can hear around the house. But the main ghost things are the woman at the bottom of the stairs where she fell, and you can hear the tapping as if she's falling. The woman with the white dress that walks past the kitchen, and
that's creepy.
Stormy Norman, and he's slamming doors.
Yeah, man, that woman in the white, I think, would creep me out. That's just like I've seen two stereotypical ghosts in my life. Both was the same ghost, and it was a woman in a long white dress. Apparently, that's a common thing too these days. I don't know what that's about, but starting this podcast, a lot of people see a woman in white. Do you know? Random question, I guess, but do you know, or do you remember? Have you seen what her hair looks like by chance?
Well, my mum always stands by the fact that she thinks it was a wedding dress that she was wearing, but it wouldn't add up for the woman that passed away because obviously she was like 18, things like that. Right. I always thought it looked more like she was wearing a nightgown, and I always remember that she had short hair, but I couldn't tell you what color, couldn't tell you what style. I just know that it was short. It wasn't like these long flowing, what's a thing from Ring?
Oh yeah,
The draped black hair kind of thing. It was short. It was basically just an old woman in a white nightgown kind of thing.
That's really creepy. It's very similar to mine. She had like long black frizzy hair, but it was black, but hers was long. Yeah, there's something to that. There's something to seeing a woman in a white gown of some sort. And whenever I hear somebody else say that, and like we didn't talk about your stories before the show, so I'm hearing your stories for the first time, and I love hearing that. Like I mentioned before, I guess I like hearing validation in what you're seeing or whatever, and that's just another person that validates. Because I still feel like I'm a crazy person sometimes too, talking about ghosts. I like hearing similar stories to mine.
Yeah, my mum always says that. She always goes, my dad, like I said, my dad hates ghosts, so he just shuts down any conversation that's anything to do with that. So my mum always goes, I'm not crazy. I do see these things, but they're hard to explain to somebody if they've not seen it themselves.
Right. I feel like we need to have your mom as a special guest on Paranormal Axetivities one of these days.
You know what? I think she'd actually really enjoy that because she's got tons of stories that she always tells people. And like I texted her and I said, "Have you got any stories that I can tell on this podcast?" And she would just let me get the actual text message up. She put, yes, screaming, lots of banging doors and flying commodes.
I'm not sure what a commode is.
So a commode is a it's a toilet on wheels. So they
Oh,
wheel the toilet to the old person so they could go to the toilet, and then they take that to the actual toilet to flush it.
gotcha.
But she said they used to just like come wheeling out of rooms and down corridors and stuff with nobody pushing it.
That would creep me out so much. And I have to ask, were they used commodes or were they clean commodes?
I've never asked that question. You know what? That should have probably been one of the first things that crossed my mind, but I've never asked that. And you know what? I'm going to text her after this and be like, was there shit in them?
That's an important thing to know, I think, because it changes how I'm going to react to seeing that. That's pretty wild. Like this house just seems super. Have you ever had any like paranormal investigators check it out or anything like that?
No, I can never remember what those monitor things are. You know, those things that beep when it gets a disturbance. Those are electromagnetic things.
Yeah, EMF meter, electromagnetic
Yeah,
field meters. Yeah,
I've always wanted to get one of those and basically walk around and just see where it goes. But we've never had anybody like legitimately come in for that purpose.
gotcha. Yep, that'd be really cool. If I'm ever in England, I want to come check it out. But with COVID, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah. With the rate COVID's going, those ghosts might be gone by then.
All right, they're going to
we,
be.
we might have a new ghost with a mask on.
I'll get some modern 2020 ghost. Netflix, I guess.
Yeah, that's always been a thing though. That I've always wondered why when you see a ghost, it's never a modern day ghost. Like it's always someone in old clothing or an old lady. It's never just a normal modern person.
That's very true in a lot of cases. I don't know if you. I like stand up comedy or stand up comedy, I should say. And Aziz Ansari has a joke about that. And he goes on about how like the new ghost will be like asking for your Wi-Fi password and shit like that. Pretty funny. Now you did mention earlier that you do have one story not related to your house. Is that right?
Yeah, it's strange because it's not really. Well, I guess it's paranormal, but it's not ghosty. If you get what I mean.
Sure.
So, me and my mate Luke, he probably will watch this at some point. I don't know if he'll be awake now.
Sure.
But we were out one day. I think we're like 16 or something. We were just walking past this shop and we were chatting away. It's broad daylight, and then all of a sudden we both went to go take a step and just stopped, and it was like a flash of white light hit, and we both kind of stopped, looked at each other, and were like, "Did something just happen?" Like as if we'd walked through something, but there was nothing there. And to this day, both of us know that something happened. We don't know what happened.
Hmm. Did you ever Google that? I've heard of things like that before too. Have you ever like, Googled what that could have been or what other people experience similar things?
You know, I never have, but I stand to this day that it was like we walked through a door to something else, but on the other side was just what we were doing anyway. But it just seemed more weird the fact that both of us kind of looked at each other and were like, something did just happen, but I can't tell you what.
Oh, yeah, that's crazy. I've heard. I guess what they call it these days, they call it like a break in the matrix, and like people walk through or drive through or wake up in, and it's just like a little different. Something's not right, and they lose time or that kind of stuff. But yeah, I sometimes I get lost in the rabbit hole of those stories on like Reddit and shit like that. It's just like, wow. Um,
That's going to be another thing now. When I go off, I'm going to start googling walk through imaginary portal.
I mean, but at least you weren't alone. Like it was, you had somebody other to validate it. So that's definitely an interesting thing. And I'm going to Google that too when I get off here. Google, like you said, it was a white light.
Yeah, you know, like as if a car drove past and the sun hit the thing and then it hits your eyesight. It was like that, but there was nobody else around. It was just us two. So that's what made it weird. Because like if a car was driving past, I could have understood. We would have probably gone, "Oh yeah, well that." because it was only us walking down this road, it didn't seem right.
That's creepy, I think. Like I think that'd be scarier a lot of times than like a ghost in your house or whatever, because at least with a paranormal entity you can kind of explain or try to get away from, but like that is just scary in a whole different way, I think.
Yeah, I think it's more it's the not knowing, isn't it? It's the there was something, but
I absolutely agree. That's wild, man. Well, hey, brother, I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me today on Paranormal Activities. It was a pleasure, and I love your house. And I'm going to ask you, can let me know if you want to, but I would love to get some pictures of your house. Have you ever like captured any orbs or anything like that? Have you ever taken pictures inside your house by chance?
yeah, I've taken loads. I'll have to go have a look through and see if I can find anything like that. And I'll have to go to my mum's when this lockdown shit's finished, and take some photos of what the old house used to look like and what it looks like now. Because the resemblance is there, but it also isn't. If you get what I mean, like you can see what the old house was, but now it just looks that slightly bit different.
Right. I get that. Absolutely. It's like a facelift. You can see the foundation, but you can see the change as well.
Yeah, you can see the added bits to it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see them sometime. And if you like, if you send them, I can put them on our social media and all that kind of stuff. And kind of cool.
Yeah, I'll set a camera up and see if I can find that woman in the white dress.
There you go. I would love that so much. Like a while back when I first started with the AEE doing this podcast, I did a little like ghost hunt in my house. I had cameras set up all over the house. You should totally do something like that. That'd be fantastic. Because you would, from the way it sounds, there is no way you couldn't catch something.
No, no, every little bit of the house has got a different story.
Right. Absolutely. All right, man. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me today on this show. And again, you are Alex Bennison from the Armchair Wrestling Podcast and the Stand Your Ground Football Podcast. So you've interviewed some legends: Ken Shamrock, Al Snow, Mark Marrow. I'm a little jealous of those guys, but hey, man, that's awesome shows. Be sure to check out Alex. And where can we find all of your shows?
So you can find them on Spotify, iTunes, and Stitcher at Armchair Wrestling. And come on over to Twitter, Armchair Wrestle One on the screen. Come and follow us. We're just that close from hitting 1,000 followers as well. So come on, we need it before the end of this year.
Hell yeah, be sure to follow Alex. And of course, you can find all his shows and Paranormal Activities all at alleverythingentertainment.com. All right, brother. Well, hey, I really did, like I said 13 times already, but I mean it full-heartedly. I appreciate you taking the time to hanging out. I know it's way later over there than it is here, so I feel a little guilty about that, but I had to work, so I'm not all that guilty.
No, it's fine. It's my Friday tomorrow, so I don't really need to be like all checked in.
No, fair enough. Well, hey, man, I do appreciate you. And be sure, guys, to check us all out. Check out all of my stuff, RSH, Paranormal Activities, the other show that I do, Marital Nonsense, all of Alex's shows. We have plenty of audio podcasts as well, along with video shows. Check all of the entertainment over at AEE, and be sure to check out all of Alex's interviews because they are fantastic. And at the end of the day, guys, let's just keep learning about the paranormal together.
Yeah, man.